Hello everyone. Today a new video about a topic that is really nice: heat exchanger networks. So at first I'm going to introduce the problem, what are heat exchangers, the notations I'm using. I'm going to describe more the problem. I'm going to talk about the problem table analysis. Especially if you are in computer science, it can be interesting project like to submit to a professor. I'm going to talk about the composite curve and surface and cost analysis, and then the few tools that can be used to study those problems, and then the references and sources used for this video. Okay, so I was discussing earlier with a student in computer science about what I'm doing. I'm explaining because I wanted to explain this. So I said the following. So imagine you have n hot flows of a hot fluid, and you have m cold flows that you want to heat up. So obviously you could consider and say, oh, just heat the cold fluids with individual heat exchangers, and then cool down the hot fluids with a cooling fluid. But if you do that, you will lose a lot of energy. So obviously, like if you have something hot and something cold, you can reuse part of this energy to be more efficient. And this is one of the most interesting problems of the 21st century, is that, oh, I have some energy to use. How can I reuse this energy? And obviously, we will try to find networks to intertwine the streams of cold and hot flows in order to maximize the energy optimization. So we will use the work of Linhoff and what he called pinch design method, which is used for heat transfer calculations and chemical engineerings, and it's really used to size exchangers in the 21st century. So at first we will try to see what's a heat exchanger. So it's a box in which a fluid called hot enters and exits cooler, and a fluid that is called cold, and that exits hotter. So we have four connections, two inlets and two outlets. We can show that thermodynamically the most efficient geometry, the most simple geometry, is the counterflow. So what I mean by that is that you can have different geometries that exist, but it's not the most efficient in terms of simple geometry. By simple geometry, I mean just a plate that is flat, entirely flat. And what we do when we study more complex geometries, we turn it as a percentage of the case of counterflow. We have various variables that we say, okay, it's 70% of a counterflow heat exchanger. Now you might ask, why would you need different geometries? But it's simple. You might not only want to heat your fluid. You might want to make it react with a chemical. You might want it to have turbulence. So these problems are more complex than just heat, which is why I'm explaining this. So the industry uses mainly counter, so what I call CC, so contre-courant, meaning counterflow geometries. So we use either that or geometries that are inspired as a highly percentage of counter flow, so CC, heat exchangers, and we will use that for our study. because it's convenient. So when you study an heat exchanger, you have the temperature of the hot fluid, that is a variable of the x, so the x-axis is the axis of the flow, and the temperature of the cold stream also as a temperature of x, because since we are in counterflow, the axis of both streams are perpendicular to each other because they touch each other to the sides, on the contrary to some very exotic geometries. And you obviously have the Q, so the heat flux that is exchanged between the two fluids. Now, I'm going to explain it a bit later, but I will use, for hot, I will call it TC, and for TC, I will call it TF, because it's convenient for me. So usually when you study this, you can study it for heat exchangers and chemical exchangers, like with softwares like ProSim that are used to compute those values numerically. Or you can try to do some kind of models that exist, but I'm not going to go too much in detail. So we have a modelization for one exchanger. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a network. We are dealing with a network of heat exchangers, and we can't study like as the temperature as a function of x. It's ridiculous. So we will suppose at first that 100% of the enthalpy of the hot fluid goes to the cold fluid, which is a very big assumption. I understand that. But we will compensate it with a certain factor. And the heat exchangers are characterized by a coefficient h. So it's a unit of power per degree per surface. So one can recognize energy per degree, which is the capacity, the heat capacity, per unit of surface. So it says if H is high, it means that the exchange is high for a certain surface, and if H is low, it means that the exchange is low for a certain surface. And also, if you increase the K, so the difference of temperature, it means that it will increase the exchange. So for the same surface, if you increase the difference of temperature between two fluids, it means that the total flow will, the total heat exchange will increase. So I'm French, so I'm using French notations. So C means chaude, so hot in English. F means froid, which is cold in English. E means entrée, which is inlet in English. And S means sortie, which is outlet in English. And for example, something that we will see later with delta TML, here we have TCE. It means the temperature of the fluid chaud. So chaud is hot, so it's an H. And the E means entrée, so THI for inlet. So now we will try to see how this kind of problem is dealt with. Sorry. So when you do this problem, you will notice that the problem looks like this. So you have four, here in this problem, we have two hot streams, two cold streams, and what we call utility. So utilities are kinds of fluids that you have to pay for, like you don't want to use it, but it's to complement the heat exchange. As we've seen earlier in our problem, we can either put some kind of externary fluid to go from 180 degrees Celsius to 75 degrees Celsius, but it's not convenient. So we're minimizing the utility used. So we have the T1, so it's the temperature of inlet, and T2, temperature of outlet. So we have our hot our hot flows and our cold flows. Now we have a unit called MCP. So I call it a big CP, which is the product of the M point, so the massic flow, times the CPC, so the temperature of the cold stream, the calorific capacity of the fluid. So M is a massic flow times Cp, which is a calorific capacity. Its unit is kilowatt per Celsius, because M point is in kilogram per second, and Cp is in joule or kilojoule per degree Celsius per kilogram. Now, if one is a bit more confident with thermodynamical properties, one might notice that Cp is a function of temperature. So if we are dealing with temperature, it's a bit clunky to say, oh, the Cp is that value, which is true. It's actually a true. But since we are dealing with very large problems, usually averaging the Cp with its value along its path. So, for example, saying that the Cp of this fluid is about the small Cp, not the MCP, is a certain value. So the average of the Cp between the path between 180 and 75, it's an assumption. So one might say, oh, what are we saying? It's weird. But honestly, it works fine for our study. We are considering perfect exchangers, so exchangers that exchange 100% of the heat, meaning that if we are dealing with if you have a hand that is hot and you put it on the cold water, obviously you will not transfer all your energy to the water. You will only transfer part of it. So this assumption can be wrong depending on the length of the surface of your exchanger. Now we have utilities that we use and that cost us extra money to use to correct a lack of or excess of energy. One can also notice that we have a problem for costs. So I will explain it a bit in depth later, but the cost of energies and coolers are a function of the surface. The cost of heaters are a function of surface. The cost of cooling utilities are in dollars per kilowatt per year, and same for heating utilities. Now, where the CompC people wake up is what we call the PTA, problem table analysis. So it's an algorithm that works well to determine what's the minimum amount of heat exchanger, what is the minimum amount of cold utilities, and what is the minimal amount of hot utilities. So what we will do is define a first variable called delta T min. So delta T min, as we say, will compensate the fact that we consider perfect exchanger. If delta min is low, it means that the gap between our two curves, so I will explain it a bit later, is low, so that we maximize the exchanger. So delta T min low means high exchange, and delta min high means that we have a high a gap between the hot and cold streams, meaning that we have low heat exchange, which is bad. And when we deal with this problem, we usually put delta min equal to delta min is equal to 10, but it's just for the sake of this problem. Like in all the exercise, it's delta min equal to 10 degrees Celsius or delta 10 Kelvin. I'm not sure exactly how you're supposed to choose it, but I think Linhof has a detailed explanation on why you should use a certain value or not, and we'll see about this later. So the first step is for each of the flow, we will consider another temperature. If the fluid is cold, then the temperature and inlet and the temperature of outlet are increased by delta min over 2. And if the fluid is hot, then the T inlet and the T outlet are decreased by delta T min over 2. What we will do is kind of shift artificially our temperatures. So we'll get some kind of table that looks like this, So here we have our streams with our CP, our T of inlet, outlet, and the enthalpy in kilowatts. So it's a flow of enthalpy, so it's units of kilowatts and not kilojoule. So once we have this, we will try to compare. For example, let's say we have one of our stream and we shift it to delta T min over 2. In this case, we have taken delta T min is equal to 10, so delta T min over 2 is 5. So the hot stream, so chaud, is the same temperature minus 5, and same for the outlet minus 5. For the cold streams, so froid, we take our stream and we increase it by delta min over 2, which is 5, and we get 45. And to calculate the H, you can simply do MCP times the delta T, and you get the H, which is fine. We will use these values later. Step 2. So the second step is to determine the intervals of temperature in such that the interval is maximum, so that you will not have two intervals that are useless, and that all the flow stay in it. So what do we do? First, we see what's the highest temperature in our sheet. So here we can see that it's 325 in the stream 5. So we put it here. And the second highest temperature is 315. So we have an interval of temperature between 325 and 315 that has only the flow 5, because here the stream 2 only will start to enter at 315. So in this interval of temperature there is only 5. Now for the stream for the interval 2, we put the value that was back here, and we start looking for the third highest value. So here it's 226, and it will mark the entrance of the fluid 6. And here we have seen that earlier 315 means that the fluid 2 enters. So we have two streams, 5 and 2. And we go on. Obviously we remove them when they leave, like the fluid 6 at 225. See, at 225 the fluid 6, so the stream 6 leaves, so it's removed. And we do that all the way through. Then for each interval of temperature, we will calculate the delta T, so the difference of temperature, and we will calculate the CPI, so it's the sum for all the streams that are in it. For example, if I scroll a bit up, here in the stream 7, it will be the CP, the big CP of 5 plus the big CP of 1 and the big CP of 3. Now, once we have this, we have our big CP, and we will calculate delta HI, which is the delta T of the interval times the CPI. So we get our delta H here. Now you might notice that some of them are positive and some of them are negative. Positive means that the process is exothermic, and below zero it means that the process is endothermic. Now we will calculate the cumulative sum, so the cum sum, and with delta H cum is equal to the cumulative sum. So for example, for the 1 it's just this value, for the 2 it's this value plus this value, for the third it's this value plus this value plus this value, etc. So our cumulative sum looks like this. So we can notice that we have negative values. So here the sign for the cum sum, you can change the sign. It's not really a matter. You can like do minus the sign. I'm not going to explain too much why you can change, but we are dealing with absolute values, so it does not matter. What matters is if it changes sign. So here we have 214, which is equivalent to minus 214. So here we have a temperature, an enthalpy that decreases until this point, and then it increases. So absolutely it increases up to here, then decreases, then increases, and then decreases. Now the absolute value reaches the maximum that is called the pinch. So this value that is the absolute maximum, we will try to cancel it. The goal is that for the interval 7, we get an enthalpy that is equal to 0. So what we will do is we will shift all this column by adding the opposite of this. So we'll do plus 1605 kilowatts. So yeah, that's what I explained. We shift it again with a certain enthalpy. So yeah, we've identified the pinch, which is the absolute maximum. Now we build a second variable that is shifted by 1605, and then we add it to the other side. So here, remember, we had minus 214, and then when we add it, we get this number. So we get this process, and notice that in the pinch it is equal to 0. Now the good thing is that we can identify instantly the cold and the hot utilities, because the cold utilities are the ones on the bottom, because see, we have here the cold stream, the coldest stream, in which we will add it 1205 kilowatts, and for the hot stream, so the one on the top, it's equal to 1605. So our algorithm is almost finished. We have found the hot utilities, the cold utilities, and the number of the optimum amount of, well, the minimum optimum. Well, it's complicated because we are doing the assumption that it's optimum, but also it's the minimum with the hypothesis of optimum. So the minimum amount of heat exchanger is 10, because we have 10 intervals. So the conclusion of the PTA algorithm is that for an input you have a flow, flows, so streams, and a perfect exchanger hypothesis, and in output you have the amount of exchangers needed, and the hot and cold utilities. So a convenient way for it to be represented is the composite curve. So it's a diagram in which the vertical axis is the temperature, so in degrees Celsius, and the delta H, which is a shift in enthalpy. And since it's a differential value, all of the curve could theoretically be shifted to the left or right, but not up and down. For example, the red, I can move it to the right, I can move it to the left, and the same way, the curve in blue, I can move it to the right and to the left. Now, the one on the top is the one with the highest temperature, so it's the hot fluids. And in the bottom, we have heat sinks. We can notice on this diagram three immediate values. So the first one is the cold utility, that is the one here. So when you read the coordinates of this value, you get the cold utility. This difference in enthalpy is the hot utility, and everything that is in between is the enthalpy used by the system, which means that it's all the energy that is given from the hot to the cold. Now, what is the slope of this curve? We have a diagram as a temperature as a function of delta H, so the curve is 1 over big Cp. Now, what is the pinch? The pinch is the place in which the minimum of where it touches. So here I remove the part with the pinch, but it means that here we have the axis of temperature. It means that the minimum between the shift between this and this. Because if we had delta T min is equal to 0, it means that the two curves would touch. And if they would touch, it means that you have an extremely high quality heat exchanger in which you have a perfect exchange. And delta min is a correction to the hypothesis we did earlier, because here with delta T min is equal to 5, when we shifted by plus or minus delta T min over 2, the hot, we put it halfway downward, and the cold way, we put it halfway upward. So it touched when we did the shift. And the way we do that is that we prevent those two from touching by saying, okay, so if our minimum difference of temperature is 10, then we imagine they touch, and then we build our hot and cold utilities. And so delta T min characterizes the efficiency of heat exchangers. Now, the composite curves follow rules. So it separates two zones that are called above the pinch, so when the temperature is above the pinch temperature, and the below pinch, that is below, so the temperature below the pinch temperature. Now, we might notice that certain rules work for the slopes due to thermodynamical impact. So above the pinch, the Cp of the hot, so chaud, so C for chaud, is inferior to the one of the cold, so froid. And below the pinch, Cpc is above Cpf. So this is a thermodynamical reasoning. And now we will try to maximize the heat flow. So we try to minimize the amount of heat exchanger, because each interval represents a heat exchanger. And what we will do is we will start from our pinch, and we will move it in two ways. In particular, these two segments are independent from each other. So you can either work with the above zone and then the below, or from the below to the hot part, to the above pinch. Now, let's try to build one. So this is what our problem looks like when we do the pinch analysis. So here we have a different problem in which the pinch is at 100 as a temperature, and we have different flow from various reasoning. And here we study the part, is it above or below? I don't remember. It's above. We study above the pinch. So above the pinch we have 1, 3, and 5. And because we start near the pinch, and you can see that 2 and 6 do not touch the pinch. So 1, 3, and 5. Now, with the reasoning we did earlier, since we have above the pinch, the CP of the chaud, so hot, must be inferior to the CP of the froid, so the cold. So here we have a flow negative. So using those, you can build a new way, and as you can see here, the flows can't be paired with others. So what we will do is we will split our fluid 5, because since 5 is too high to pair them, we'll split them in a way that this can match part of this and this can match part of it, because it's a product of the CP, a CP that is more or less a constant, and the flow, the massic flow. And the massic flow, you can split it by doing a split in your fluid system. So it looks like this. We have our fluid 5 near the pinch, and we split it. One that will be linked to the flow 1, and it turns out that it will absorb all, it will fill all its requirement, because it will go from the pinch to the desired temperature, which is good. Well, it's the opposite. It's from the hot temperature to the pinch. So the fluid 1 is now completed for the above pinch part. Now the other part is here, and depending on the mass flow, it will have a certain temperature here, but the temperature here, when we come back from the 2, will be the same. Now we'll design the flow in a way so that the fluid 3 is completed, so that it goes from 140 to 100. So now the fluid 3 is done. Now what are we left with? We are at 161, and we have a fluid that wants to go to 200 and one that wants to go to 220. So what we will do is we will try to pair this one with the lowest, so 200 or 220. So we pick the stream 2. So now we pair it, and it turns out that this does not furnish enough energy to heat this and put it only at 273 and not at 320. So now we don't have any more hot heat exchangers, streams, and we have only cold streams. So one at 273 and one that wasn't touched. So what we do is we had 2 hot utilities, so that will heat the cold streams. And we work in the same way in the cold part, and we get some kind of this diagram. Unfortunately, I took the example in which from a course in which it's problematic, because you can't pair it as well as you would like to, because here it's not working really well. But a final system looks like this. Now, how do we study surfaces? Now we will do another table of temperature with none that are not shifted by delta T min. It is very important, because it's different. We can't do this anymore, because now we're dealing with the true system. The part shifted by delta T min was for the analysis, the first analysis of temperature, building the utilities and such. And this time we are separating the cold and the hot streams. So remember in the earlier part when we scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, when we did the intervals, we did not differentiate whether it's a hot stream or when it's a cold stream. But this time we will do interval for cold and interval for hot, and that will be different, of course. So this one is the part I made myself, so I'm really proud of it. Look at this marvelous diagram, which is the courbe composite. So what we'll try to do is build this diagram. So here we have the temperature, and here we have the enthalpy differential in kilowatts. We can notice that the origin is the same. It's because this one is not shifted by the utilities, because it's really simple. When you want to build a courbe composite with utilities, you just have to shift the cold with the cold utilities. So you shift it that way, and then that will shift the whole curve, and then this part will appear, the part with the hot utilities, similarly to the diagram above that was here. Here. So my diagram has cold utility equal to 0, and you just have to shift in delta H to have both hot and cold utilities appear. Now, so obviously I built both, but what we'll do is study our courbe composite, so composite curve, without the utilities. So remember that we built a COMSUM enthalpy. So we separe the intervals of temperature with cold and hot. So now what we'll do is we will calculate the enthalpy of the hot and the enthalpy of the cold fluid. So delta H chaud and delta H froid for all the intervals, but there will be difference. Don't sum them up. So you will end up with n enthalpies of the hot streams and n or m enthalpies of the cold streams. And then, similarly to earlier, you will build the COMSUM of the enthalpy. So it's just the cumulative sum of the process, because the values you have is just the shift between this point and this point. You don't have the values of this point. And then you can plot it as line functions. Now we are missing a bit of information, but it's not too much of a problem. Is because if you see on this interval here, we have this point here and this point here. But the problem is we don't have the values of the blue point, and we don't have the value of the orange point that should be here. Now, what we do is, obviously, this problem is really easy, but I explained the physical arguments. The slope is 1 over Cp, so what we have to gather is the information of 1 over Cp in order to find this point, and then it's really simple. It's just the value, the extension of a line. So since all of our diagrams are lines, we can find these values and these values. Now, each of the hot curves I has for slope 1 over CPIC, and CPIC is, remember, we've splitted intervals of temperature for the hot and for the cold. For the hot, it will be the sum of the CPs of the interval of the hot streams, and for the cold curves, it will be 1 over CPIF, so froid. It will be the sum of all the cold streams in the interval I, so the CPs. But the thing is that we know that the CPK is just the delta H, so the shift in enthalpy that we have calculated earlier, and the shift in T, which we already have. So what I build is a series of modules like this. So I had like 12 or 11 intervals. So what I build is the number, I build an Excel sheet with the number of my intervals, so it's 1. The enthalpy mean is, so it's the enthalpy here. The enthalpy max, either I can get it from doing the value before plus the delta H that we already have, or what I can do is I can just take the CumSum value, and for the mean part, when I am in the following interval, so like the interval 2, I can just get the value from before because the intervals are touching each other. So these are intervals of enthalpy and not intervals of temperature. So now I build intervals of enthalpy. Also, I might not have mentioned, but the values of the delta H that you pick up here, it's the values of H by just summing the delta H that we get earlier, way earlier. See, it's the values of H we get, no, delta P that we get here. So just do MCP times the delta T, and you get the values of delta H. And for example, if I have one of my interval that is chaud, so hot, with the streams 4 and 2, I will just do the delta H that is equal to this plus this. Very simple. Now, let's come back further. Now, I have my enthalpies for the interval. Now, what do we have? We have the temperature TFE, so TFE means inlet, right? Remember? TFE, the first temperature is 20, because we start at 20. It's the temperature we already have. We have also this temperature and this temperature. We want to find the temperature so that it cuts vertically here. And we know the delta H, we know the CP, so by dividing we get this shift in temperature, so 3 degrees. So the new values is equal to the inlet value plus the shift in temperature due to the increase of enthalpy, that is equal to 23 degrees. And then we get our temperature TFS. And we can automate this process, we can make it automatic by just copy pasting this block. So I made this block and I copy paste it, and I can have a full sheet with all my temperatures. And now you might ask, why do we need this temperature, and also why do we need intervals of temperature? It's for the surface analysis. For the surface analysis, now what we do is we pick the CPs we pick here are the ones from intervals of temperatures, but separating the hot and the cold, as I explained earlier. So for example, here in this interval between 90 and 159, I have the streams 1, 2, and 3, and its CP is this value. I also computed the delta H. Now back to this. So for the heat exchangers, for one in heat exchangers, we are used to the variable called delta TML, which is this junk, which relates the 4 variables of one exchanger. And it turns out that since we have isolated all the intervals of enthalpy, we can use this variable for each of the intervals of enthalpy. Oh, I said interval of temperature, but it's an interval of enthalpy. So for each block like this. So when we have all these curves, so we isolate when a curve changes slopes. So here, and we calculate in this interval a value called delta TML. So we say that this area is an exchanger. Now, Now what we do is we build a new variable, so Cp over h. H, remember, is our coefficient for the exchanger. So if I is an interval of hot streams A, B, and C, and cold streams D, E, and F, it does this formula. And then we calculate the equivalent area of one interval of enthalpy. So I wrote domain of temperature, but it's domain of enthalpy, because here, remember, the axis here is enthalpy. It's not domains of temperature as I wrote. Now we use this formula, so it relates the area, the equivalent area. This factor Cp over h, it relates, it's equivalent to, it's homogeneous to a surface. And since we've split the cold and hot parts, we have to do the shift in cold streams times the Cp over h of the cold stream plus the shift in temperature times the Cp over h of the hot streams. All of this divided by delta TML of the interval. So we do this for each of the interval of enthalpy. And then once we have the AI, we just do the total surface, the total area, is just the sum of all the interval of enthalpy. So now we get a value that is called the minimum surface of our whole network, because we have a network of n intervals of enthalpy, and then the minimum will just assume that we have for each interval of enthalpy we have one exchanger. So we calculate for each of these interval a surface, and then we get then we get a total surface. Now we'll analyze the costs. So it's very simple, because the operating costs are just the cost of the show, so hot, the cost of the hot utility, times the flow of the hot utility, plus the price of the cold utility times the flow of the cold utility. Now it's very simple to get the values of the QC, because since we know the CPC, and we can know the value of CPC by just looking at the tables of the calorific capacity, we get the massic flow, and with the volumic mass you can get the QC, so the volumic flow. So here I put C as a euro per year per kilowatt, but it's a bit weird, because that's what you put in problems, like not real stuff. But in reality, what you pay is a mass flow. When you pay for a volumic flow than energy. Like, you don't say I want 1 joule of water. That doesn't work. Like, if you ask your water company and say I want 1 joule of water, they will say no. So what you pay is actually the volumic or mass flow, which both are equivalent. And what you say to your water company, you say, hey, I want 1 liter or 1 cubic meter of water, which is why it's important to do this conversion if you are dealing with a real problem. However, in courses, usually you have this coefficient that is already per kilowatt, so you don't have to do the conversion. And then it is added with an investment cost that is that costs only once, so it's not during the it does not work when the machine is running, it's before. So for each of the interval of enthalpy, we define a criteria called the coût d'investissement, so investment cost. Ci is equal to A plus B times the surface of the intervals over C. And these are constants given by a study of the market. And usually, when you have a problem like this, the teachers like to give you coefficients, and you can do something like that. And then the total cost is just the sum of all the CI, and you get a price. Now there exists a small correction that is important to know. It's due to finance stuff, investment thingy. It's called the coefficient d'amortissement. So if you have a rate of investment I, a rate of interest I, and a number of years, you have to correct with this factor. So it's just like if you are doing a very precise cost analysis, it's important to correct it. And then the total cost is just the sum of this with the operating costs. Now for hints, we have two main tools that I know about. The first tool is Hints, made by Angel Martin and Fidel Mato. So it's a free educational tool by Spanning researchers for chemical engineer in 2008. It works very well for a bunch of stuff, except like the cost analysis doesn't work well. So how does it work is you put your delta Tmin in a text box, and you add all your streams exactly like on the problem solving, and it gives you all the curves. It gives you the composite curves, everything, so it works fine. Now, the second tool is one from Thermoptim, so it's an educational tool also, more for thermodynamics, but also exchangers, and I actually did not know about this before looking at it online. Is that it works apparently the same as int, but I did not use it for int, I use it for other purposes. So I don't think I can help about it, but it gives information that are similar to int. So I don't know if it works well, but apparently it exists. And then for the references and sources, so I consulted some articles by Lenov, the article for hints, so the one from Angel Martin, and my course on heat exchanger networks, and my project on surface analysis and cost analysis, and the course of MinPyTech for the tables for the problem earlier. So I can just copy paste, and it worked really well. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and bye.